Hey everyone, this is Romel Abordo, and today we're going to continue our discussion, which is under in Unit 1. We focus in Unit 1, which is theoretical foundation in curriculum, but we focus in philosophical foundation. So now, in learning objectives, at the end of the discussion, the student should be able to explain the meaning, nature, and importance of philosophical foundation in curriculum development. Next, differentiate the major philosophical foundation of curriculum and apply them to classroom teaching situation through collaboration activities. Okay, next is participate actively in the class discussion and reflection activities to show understanding of the role of philosophy in designing a learner-centered, meaningful, and value-oriented curriculum. Okay? Now, let's continue our discussion. So, first is curriculum. Curriculum is more than a list of subjects taught in school. So, it is a planned set of learning experience designed to help learners achieve educational goals. So, in curriculum, it's not only a list of subjects taught in school. It is a carefully planned set of learning experience prepared by the school to help students achieve educational goals. Okay, this means that curriculum includes not only a subject like English, mathematics, science, and Filipino, but also classroom activities, project, group work, values formation assessment, and other experiences that help learners grow. The main purpose of the curriculum is to develop students' intellectuality, socially, emotionally, morally, and physically. It guides teachers on what to teach, how to teach, and what learners are expected to learn. Okay? Get? Okay, now let's proceed to the foundations. So, refers to the basic belief, ideas, values, and principles about education that guides curriculum planning, teaching, learning, and educational decision making. So, it means, and this is also the different educational philosophies such as idealism, realism, pragmatism, existentialism, essentialism, progressivism, parentialism, and reconstructionism. So, this foundation help this foundation help answer the important questions such as why do we teach? Why should be taught? Or how should students learn? What kind of person should education develop? Because of this belief, educators can make better decisions in curriculum planning, teaching, methods, learning activities, and assessment. So, for example, if a school believes that education should prepare students for real-life situation, it may use for practical activities, projects, and problem-solving tasks. So, the foundation comes from the different educational philosophies. And each philosophy has its own view about education. So, for example, idealism, right? Idealism is one of philosophy. So, idealism focuses on ideas, values, and moral development. However, the realism focuses on facts, observation, and scientific knowledge. There's a lot of difference. In pragmatism, focus on learning through experience and real-life application. So, in existentialism, focus on individual freedom, choice, and self-discovery. Then, essentialism, focus on teaching, essential knowledge, and skills, right? So, progressivism focus on learner-centered and active learning. So, the student is active during your active participation during sa inyong discussions and the activities. So, parentialism focuses on timeless truth and classic knowledge. So, The lastly is Reconstructionism, focused on improving society through education. And now, let's proceed to the importance of philosophical foundation. So there's a lot of importance of philosophical foundation. So is that they provide a guiding belief and principles behind education curriculum, teaching, and learning. So philosophy help educators understand why we teach, what we should teach, and how teaching should be done. So first is give direction to gives direction to education. Second is guides curriculum development, shapes teaching method, helps teacher make decision, promotes consistency in education, develop critical thinking, and transmits values of education, transmit values and culture, and support professional growth of teachers. So, philosophical foundation are important because they provide the guiding belief and principles behind education, curriculum, teaching, and learning. They help educators understand the purpose of education, and how to teaching and learning should be carried out. So first is gives direction to education. So philosophy gives a clear direction to students and teachers. So it helps determine the goals and education and what kind of learner should be developed. Okay, next is guide curriculum development. Okay, so it helps curriculum developers decide what subject, skills, values, and learning experiences should be included in that curriculum. Okay, next, shape teaching method. So, teacher choose a teaching strategies based on their educational belief. So, for example, they may use discussion, projects, experiments, or lectures depending on what they believe in is effective. Okay? So next is helps teacher make decisions. So philosophy serves as guide when teachers face classroom problems or need to make decision about instructions, uh, discipline, and assessment. Okay? So next is promotes consistency in education So it ensures that educational goals, teaching method, learning activities, and assessment are connected and work together. Next is develop critical thinking. So philosophy also encourage both teachers and the students to think deeply, ask questions, analyze ideas, to make reasonable judgments. Okay? Second to the last, transmits the values and culture. So, school help preserve and pass on important values, traditions, and culture practices from one generation to another. Okay? So, 8 is support professional growth of teachers. So teachers reflect on their belief about educational and continue improving their knowledge, skills, and teaching practices. Okay? So now let's proceed to major philosophical foundation of curriculum. So first is idealism. So idealism is believes that ideas, values, and the mind are the most important aspects of reality. So education should develop intellectual and moral qualities. So in idealism, idealism believes that ideas, values, truth, and the mind are more important than physical object. The main goal of education is to develop learners' intellectual and moral character. So teachers are considered models of wisdom or good behavior. Students are encouraged to think deeply, understand universal truths, and practices good values such as honesty, respect, and responsibility. Okay, so for example, using stories, literature, and discussion to teach moral lessons and critical thinking. Okay? Okay, next is realism. So, realism believes that reality exists independent of the mind. Knowledge comes from the observation, experience, and the uh, scientific investigation. So, realism believes that the world exists independently of our truth, thought. Knowledge is obtained through observation, experience, experimentation, and scientific investigation. So, education should focus on facts, evidence, and the real world. Subjects like science and mathematics are important because they help learners understand reality objectively. So, for example, like conducting science experiments and observing natural phenomena. So, that's one of the examples nga sa realism based on the observation, experiments, or experimentation or experience. Okay? So, next is pragmatism. Believes that knowledge is gained through experience and interaction with the environment. Learning is meaningful when it is useful. So in this part, pragmatism believes that learning happens through experience and interaction with the environment. Knowledge is not only memorized, it is created through doing and solving problems. So education should be practical and useful in everyday life. So learners become active participants while teachers guide and facilitate learning. So for example, group project, problem solving activities, community work, and hands-on learning. So the teacher will facilitate. So next is existentialism. So emphasize individual freedom, choice, responsibility, and self-discovery. So it means that essentialism emphasizes individual freedom, personal choice, responsibility, and self-discipline. Every learner is unique and should be allowed to develop his or her own identity. Education should help students understand themselves, make meaningful decisions, and take responsibility for their actions. So, for example, allowing students to choose research topic, express their sayang opinion, and reflect on their personal goals and experiences. Okay? Lastly is application in curriculum development. So, curriculum developers do not usually follow only one philosophy. Instead, they only combine different philosophical foundations
To create a curriculum that responds to the diverse needs of learners and society. In curriculum development, curriculum developers do not usually follow only one educational philosophy. This is because learners have different abilities, interests, and needs and backgrounds, and society also has many changing demands. Instead, develops combine different philosophical foundation to create a more balanced and effective curriculum. So for example, idealism may be used to teach values and moral development. Realism may be used for science, mathematics, and factual knowledge. So pragmatism may be used to encourage personal choice, creativity, and self-expression. So, by combining these philosophies, the curriculum can help learners become knowledgeable, skilled, responsible, creative, and morally guided individuals. So, these approaches also allows the curriculum to respond to the needs of students, the expectation of society, and the challenges of the modern world. So, that would be our discussion this day. Thank you so much, and goodbye.